Earlier today, we're being told tourists and National Trust rangers saw the legendary fin disappear into a magical doorway within the rock face here at the Giant's Causeway.
20 tons of basalt slid open without a sound. No grinding, no friction, nothing. Like the stone had forgotten how to be stone. Behind it, a chamber sealed inside the cliffs of the Giant's Causeway, since long before there were any people around to seal it. The air inside was warm. 6 Irish researchers stood at that entrance and made a decision 3 of them now refused to talk about. Because what was waiting in there wasn't supposed to exist, and it wasn't supposed to look like us. The sealed section. Okay, before we go in with them, you need to understand why nobody was ever meant to.
Look!
For nearly 6 months after Kieran Doyle's drone footage went viral, a stretch of cliff at the Giant's Causeway sat behind steel barriers and hazard signs. The official story was coastal erosion. Keep out for your own safety. But everyone actually working the site knew the barriers had nothing to do with erosion. They went up because the scans under the basalt had stopped making sense. The chamber was real. The figures inside it were real. And the last thermal readings before the site went dark showed they were still moving. I want you to sit with that, because the people who took those readings couldn't stop sitting with it either. Several of the original scan team admitted later they'd stopped sleeping, not because they thought the figures were alive. Most of them wouldn't say that word out loud. It was the consistency. Every new scan agreed with the last one. The anomaly refused to behave like a glitch. Then someone on the Geological Survey quietly recommended,
There are visitors even coming this morning, coming out and asking us about what's actually happening here. Is this really real?
pouring reinforced concrete over the whole cliff section and sealing it forever. That recommendation was rejected within the day. No reason given. And then, in late April, the door opened on its own. The second opening, not in daylight, not during a scan, at 4:12 in the morning. Kieran Doyle had left motion cameras pointed at the cliff, running off a battery pack he'd hidden up the coast. Because of course he had. One of them caught it. At first it looked exactly like the original footage.
I actually missed the door opening because it was captured by some amateur footage.
The slab easing outward, smooth, impossible. Same as before. Except this time, it didn't close after 11 seconds. It stayed open for 2 minutes and 17 seconds. Long enough for the low light to settle. Long enough to count what was standing inside. There used to be 6. Now there were 5. Not 6, 5. One of them was simply gone, and nothing had come out through that door. I'll let you do the math on where it went, because the researchers couldn't. And there was something else in frame this time. Lower, smaller, near the back wall, bent slightly forward. The tall ones were 7 feet of whatever they were. This one looked about 6 feet. This one looked almost human. By midday, the footage had spread between the Geological Survey of Northern Ireland, Queen's University Belfast, and a small archaeological team from Dublin. According to one person in that room, the whole argument came down to a single question. If the doors open now, do we go in before someone with more authority makes sure we never can? The decision. They made the call in under 3 hours. A team would go in on the next opening. No government minders, no press, no permission. 6 people, portable lights, 2 thermal cameras, ground radar, oxygen monitors, body cams running the whole time. The next opening came the following night, 4:09 a.m. They were already waiting at the cliff when the basalt started to move. And here's the detail that gets me. On the body cam audio, nobody narrates. Nobody does the calm scientist voice. They sound like people talking themselves out of running. Dr. Ian Gallagher admitted later the slab was worse in person. Not because it was loud, but because it was silent. 20 tons sliding like a drawer. Stone is not supposed to move like that. Real quick, before we go down there with them. If stories the official record refuses to explain are your thing, subscribe right now. What this team walked into is exactly the kind of thing that gets quietly buried, and we don't bury it here. Gallagher went first. Behind him, 2 archaeologists from Trinity College Dublin, a thermal specialist, a climbing engineer, and Kieran Doyle at the back with a handheld camera. The floodlights hit the opening and just stopped. The dark in there didn't reflect, it drank the light. Inside. The floor was smooth, not carved smooth, poured smooth like the basalt, had cooled around something that was already standing there. And the room was bigger than the radar said. From outside, The scan had estimated a tight little cavity. Inside, the walls sat too far back. The space felt deeper than the cliff could physically hold. "It's bigger in here than the scans showed," one of the Trinity men says on the recording. Nobody answers. 2 minutes later, the other one says almost the exact same thing, unprompted. Then there was the temperature. Outside, the Atlantic wind was near freezing. Inside, every thermometer settled between 68 and 71 degrees Fahrenheit. Warm, dry, comfortable. Nothing sealed in rock for that long stays that stable, unless something is keeping it that way. In the leaked notes, one word keeps coming back: maintained. And then the floodlights found the far wall, and the team saw them properly for the first time. The pulse, 5 figures, upright, shoulder to shoulder, 7 feet tall, thin but not skeletal. More like someone took a human shape and gently stretched it past where a body should go. The outer surface was dark and smooth, almost mineral, but under the lights it threw the glow back wrong. Not like stone, not like bone, like burned ceramic, like cooled glass. And the room wasn't silent. There was a sound under everything, low, steady. They thought it was equipment until Dr. Callahan said, very quietly, "That's the pulse." The same rhythm they had picked up through the cliff walls during the scans. Only now they were standing inside it. Every 4 seconds, a soft thud came up through the floor and into their boots. One of the Trinity archaeologists asked the thing nobody wanted answered. "Is that coming from them?" Nobody replied, because by then they'd seen the figures weren't identical. Different heights, different shoulders, different cracks across that shell-like skin. And one of them had come open down the front of the chest cavity, not broken, opened, like something had pushed its way out from the inside. The kneeling figure. That's when Doyle swung his camera to the back of the room, and everyone stopped talking. The smaller shape was still there. Up close, you could finally see what it actually was. It wasn't standing. It was kneeling, facing the wall, head down, arms folded in against its chest, about 6 feet tall. And unlike the tall ones, this one wasn't finished. The shell was cracked badly across the shoulders and neck, and under the cracks, there was something pale. Not stone, not mineral, softer than that. "Oh my God," one of the archaeologists says. You can barely hear it. The thermal specialist moved in with the handheld scanner, and for a second, the screen catches the camera. 101.2 degrees Fahrenheit. The standing figures were warm. This one was warmer. This one was running a temperature. The walls. Gallagher had gone quiet, and when he finally spoke, it was to point at the walls. They were covered, not writing. Nothing like Algam script, nothing Celtic, nothing anyone in that room recognized. Grooves, cut into the basalt in tight concentric rings, wrapping the whole chamber, some shallow, some gouge deep. One of them said it looked like a sound wave, like a frequency someone had carved into the stone. The deepest section was burned darker than the rest. And on the floor right in front of it, the basalt was worn smooth. The specific kind of smooth you only get when something stands in the same spot, over and over, for a very long time. Then one of the Trinity archaeologists crouched near the entrance and went still. Footprints, leading out, one set, narrow, too long for a boot, none of theirs. Walking from the back of the chamber straight to the door. One direction only. Footprints mean something walked out, and nothing ever walked back in. They moved. After that, the footage falls apart, not from interference, but because the people holding the cameras start to lose it. The pulse under the floor got louder, not faster yet, louder. Then the thermal specialist said 5 words into the dark. "They are changing position." The camera whipped back to the standing figures, and one of them was no longer facing the entrance. It had turned, a few degrees toward the group. Gallagher started to say it was perspective, a trick of the angle, and stopped because the pulse changed. Not every 4 seconds anymore, 3, then 2, and then the kneeling figure moved, just its shoulders, a small, deliberate shift. Someone screamed at everyone to get out. Lights swung across the walls, the scanner hit the floor, and for about 7 seconds, the body cam caught the thing no one involved has ever explained. The grooves lit up, not bright, a dull heat crawling through the basalt, ring after ring, racing around the room in sequence. The pulse locked onto the light, and every standing figure's temperature climbed at once. 104, 106, 109. Then every camera died at the same instant. And there are 19 seconds where there is simply nothing. One of them later swore that in those 19 seconds he heard voices in there. Not words, more like 100 sounds layered into one. He never said another thing about it. When the footage comes back, they're already running and they clear the entrance 11 seconds before it seals shut behind them. The face. The official statement landed 3 days later. Unusual geothermal activity beneath the Giant's Causeway. Access restricted, environmental concerns, no chamber, no figures, no temperature that shouldn't be possible. But you can't unsee a thing like that, and pieces started leaking. Audio, thermal stills, and then, about 2 weeks on, an anonymous account dropped a single compressed still frame onto an encrypted forum used by independent geophysicists. Bad quality. But the metadata was clean, time-stamped 14 seconds before the team ran. It was the kneeling figure, except now its head was up, looking straight at the camera, and under the cracked shell around its face were features. Not a creature's, not a monster's, a human face. The post was gone in 40 minutes, the copies were not. And the thing that wrecked the people who saw it wasn't that it looked alien, it was that it didn't. If that chamber really had been sealed since the basalt first cooled, then whatever was kneeling in there should be older than the entire human species. And it had our face. One of them wrote it down better than I can. The worst part wasn't thinking something ancient was locked inside. The worst part was the feeling that it hadn't been waiting there before us, that it might have been us. What remains? After that night, the watching got serious. More barriers, satellite imaging quietly restricted over that stretch of coast. People who were there signing new confidentiality agreements under real pressure. None of it held, because the final scan leaked too. The standing figures were gone, all 5. The chamber was empty, except for the kneeling one at the back, still warm, still facing those carved rings. And the vibration log attached to that scan showed 1 pulse left inside. It wasn't running every 4 seconds anymore. It had settled into something steady, something familiar. 72 beats per minute, a resting human heart. The Giant's Causeway is still open today. Tourists still cross the basalt columns, kids climbing the black stones, while guides tell the old story about Finn McCool. Almost none of them notice the sealed section to the north, where the barriers still stand. And not one of them knows what those researchers say they found underneath. The chamber hasn't opened since. No movement, no new readings. Just one last line in the team's private notes. A question Kieran Doyle reportedly asked Dr. Gallagher on the drive back to Belfast, that Gallagher never answered. If those figures were just shells, where did the things that used to be inside them go? Nobody answered, because by then they'd all worked out the same thing. That chamber under the Giant's Causeway was never a tomb. It was never a prison. And whatever stood inside it had already started walking out long before 6 people ever stepped through that door. So, tell me down in the comments, if the last thing alive in that chamber had a heartbeat of 72 beats per minute, a human heartbeat, what do you actually think was kneeling down there? I read every theory you leave, and if you want the next story, they'd rather keep sealed, subscribe, and stay close because the next door is already starting to move.